Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today I want to talk about this situation that I honestly had not heard about until today, and that is the succession of the St. George area of Baton Rouge from Baton Rouge, which apparently was just approved by the Louisiana Supreme Court. And I want to talk about this and the implications of this, as well as how it is being addressed in the media by those who oppose the succession of this little territory. Now, we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
Thank you again for your support.
The Louisiana Supreme Court today giving the green light for St. George to become its own city with its own services and its own schools. Many in Baton Rouge were opposed to the plan, fighting for years to block it.
So after a nearly 5-year-long court battle in the state of Louisiana, their Supreme Court decided that they were going to rule in favor of the incorporation of St. George, which is an area that is south of Baton Rouge proper that wanted to break away from Baton Rouge proper due to the fact that they don't feel like their concerns are being represented. And in fact, the very thing that these people wanted prior to actually breaking away and forming their own city was to have their own school district, and that was rejected by the Democratic Party that's in charge of Baton Rouge, and this has led to a whole kerfuffle that again has led to a 5-year court battle that again has led to the creation of a new municipality called St. George.
Well, good evening to you, Elizabeth. The state Supreme Court's decision has been the talk of the town, with people chiming in on social media. Take a look at the map for yourself. It includes Shenandoah, Old Jefferson, Westminster, and South Baton Rouge. Since that map was created, there were several properties annexed into the city of Baton Rouge. Those in favor of the new city say they won, while the mayor of Baton Rouge says she's disappointed by the ruling. But despite that, the two sides are seeing some common ground.
Now, even though that is what went down, you will likely hear this being interpreted in a completely different way. And that, of course, is a racially charged kind of way. And you'll see headlines like white wealthy people decide to break away from Baton Rouge in order to form their own town. And to be perfectly honest, this is kind of exactly what happened.
We win.
St. George spokesperson Andrew Morrell says this is a culmination of 13 years, more than $1 million, and thousands of volunteers. He says there is a St. George transition district that will help move services from Baton Rouge.
We're not dumping East Baton Rouge Parish. We're not leaving or breaking away from this parish. We're making this parish better.
So for those of you who are unaware, the city of Baton Rouge prior to this split had a population of 220,000 people. And in that population, over 53% of them were Black or African American, whatever you want to call them. We're not here to get bogged down on language, but the percentage of white non-Hispanics were about 35%. Well, in St. George, this new area that actually became its own city according to this court ruling, the Black population is only 18%. Which, if you're mathing pretty well, what you'll realize is that an overwhelming majority of the white population in Baton Rouge is in this new municipality called St. George. In fact, they lost 90,000 people total in this particular split, which is kind of insane. Because that's
as the mayor president.
Baton Rouge Mayor Sharon Weston Broome says she is disappointed in the ruling, but says her administration has been preparing if this were to happen.
The percentages, the impact that it would have on the budget, what potential cuts would have to be made.
But she stopped short of crunching numbers at this point because she says the plaintiffs could ask for a rehearing.
And if reports are true, it's actually a disproportionate amount of their tax base. So yeah, this is actually quite devastating for the city of Baton Rouge.
So just a reminder for you, the effort to create this new city, as you heard, goes back more than a decade, but it wasn't brought to a ballot until 2019 when the voters who live within the St. George area got to decide. With a 60% voter turnout for that election, it passed with a narrow majority, just 54%. The state Supreme Court's decision was a close one as well, with 4 justices in favor and 3 against.
Now look, there's a bunch of different quotes from NAACP representatives that are going out there about how they feel like this is going to negatively impact the Black population of Baton Rouge. There's also a lot more cringe and insane kind of takes on the internet.com talking about how this is the rebirth of redlining, of this is just white people being evil, white, and racist. But in reality, in actuality, what this actually is democracy. This group of people voted to form their own municipality, and then the city of Baton Rouge, who, by the way, denied them a school district prior to this, which is all they actually wanted from the jump, decided that they were going to sue them in order to prevent their vote from taking effect and try to prevent them from separating off. And I actually got to give credit to one of these NAACP guys that I saw give a local interview, because he said, look, I don't like it. I think it's going to hurt the black population. Obviously, it's going to decimate the tax base. But these people voted for this, and they do have a right to form their own city, more or less. This is something that a guy who's opposed to this actually stated, and I actually think that's the fairest statement that you can have as somebody who's obviously vehemently opposed to this and invested in this project not working.
Beginning, and it will always be my goal, is to advocate for a united Baton Rouge. I am committed to serving the residents of St. George, just as I serve those of Baker, Central, and Zachary. And in the days ahead, I will proceed to have conversations to determine the best course of action in compliance with the court's final decision.
Now, obviously, there's a lot of people, including the Baton Rouge mayor, who are against this. They want the reunification of Baton Rouge because they're obviously looking at a potential decimation of their tax base. But also, they're going to try to go for the maneuver of getting a rehearing because they didn't like this ruling. And typically, when the left wing loses something, they end up calling for a do-over. So, to be 100% clear, this is not over in terms of litigation, even though the reps for the new municipality of St. George are saying, hey, why don't we just work on making this separation as amicable as possible instead of just suing each other in court over and over again. It seems like the city of Baton Rouge is having absolutely none of that.
But Pearson says she will continue this fight.
They think this case is over. It's not over until Friday week when we ask for a rehearing and specify the mistakes that the Supreme Court made.
Now, in terms of the education issue and why this local area wanted to have their own school board, it is important for you guys out there in the audience to understand that the Baton Rouge school districts are among the worst, the lowest performing in the entire state of Louisiana. This is when you factor in that the city of New Orleans, which is another city that's being run into the ground, another city that is going broke, also exists in the state of Louisiana. So they're doing worse than New Orleans in a lot of regards, not to mention the fact that they also have to deal with a relatively high crime rate, again, even within the context of New Orleans being a city that exists within the state. Now, also, we don't compare and look for the worst possible example in the state. We try to strive to better. So these are some of the reasons why the residents of the newly incorporated St. George wanted this to happen. Now, a lot of people are covering this as the black-white separation that is being portrayed to be in the mainstream media, and we have to be perfectly honest, even though 18% of the new population, or of the population of the new municipality, they're the same people that were there before, happens to be black, obviously there is a demographic shift way in the direction of the whites in this particular area, and by contrast, on the flip side, Baton Rouge will have gotten significantly blacker in terms of their city. And while a lot of people are quick to point out that some black activists, some black leaders have been asking for this separation, the right to be free from white people, and now they got what they wanted and they absolutely do not love it, I will say Baton Rouge has spent about 5 years in court trying to fight this separation. So even if somebody said that rhetorically at some point in time, in reality, they definitely did not want to lose this significant chunk of the population. Again, it's almost half of the population that is leaving. Not quite half, obviously, but still. 86,000 people leaving the city of Baton Rouge over the course of the next 2 years once they finalize this particular separation out of 220,000. 70% of that population being in the white population, disproportionately the people who are paying the taxes in the city of Baton Rouge, obviously spells disaster for Baton Rouge proper, because guess what? If they were governing their city well in the first place with the people in power, then you wouldn't have had the issue of them wanting their own school district, of them wanting more autonomy, of them wanting to get more bang for their buck in terms of their tax dollars before this. And obviously after this, when all that funding is going to be cut, these already failing schools, some of the worst in the entire state, are not going to get much better.
Whether you are for St. George or you were against St. George. Now is your opportunity, a historic opportunity, to create a city from the beginning, from the ground up. It's your ideas, it's your policies, it's your way of life, and now you can come together and put those out there and have someone accountable to you. No longer accountable to some people off in the city of Baton Rouge or somewhere else in the parish. No, they're going to be accountable to you, your neighbors, your friends, and your coworkers. So when you have your ideas, whether, again, you're against us or for us, bring them. Let's create a better city. Let's work together. Let's move past this. Because as Chris alluded to, we're not done. We're just getting started. And now you got a time to be there and be a part of it. I do want to thank the legal team. They have endured so much to get to this process. They've heard all this negativity all along the way in the press and from opposing counsel. They deserve recognition for their efforts to stay the course.
Now, again, I am fully aware of the fact that there's these broader racial implications that people are trying to inject into this, and the idea of just cutting off and separating from a minority population or minority population separating from a majority population in American context is definitely something that's going to leave a bad taste in people's mouths. But let's be perfectly honest about this particular situation. You're essentially having a section of the city being carved off into its own municipality. They're not building a giant mega wall in order to keep these other people out and making Baton Rouge pay for that wall. They can travel freely between the two. If residents prefer one particular area, presumably they could move from Baton Rouge proper to the municipality of St. George, or if they want to stay in Baton Rouge proper, then they could move back over there into that territory if they were so inclined. But I'm interested to see this new experiment and how it ends up working out. Now, my guess is because they're not going to be controlled by Democrats, and because honestly, you're setting up a new government without all the decades and, sometimes centuries of bogged down rules and regulations, that St. George is going to do particularly well. My guess is, based on the fact that Baton Rouge is not only engaging in a years-long court battle in order to keep these people, but on top of that is now asking for a rehearing of this particular case in order to force them back into this municipality, that these are the wealthy tax-paying population, and they are going to build up and do things much better than were done in Baton Rouge. So I don't think it's going to go well for the city of Baton Rouge, but I think that this should be a positive example and honestly a warning to other places, other cities across this country to the excesses of one-party rule. The fact is, we're seeing something like this spring up in Georgia. Now, technically, the Georgia Senate blocked this neighborhood from separating off from the city of Atlanta, but the idea is, hey, you know what? If I have absolutely no control, but I'm committed to my area, if I can't influence politics at all, if the rules and regulations become so crushing that I can't even form a school district in order to improve the schools for my kids, then I'm going to separate off for my municipality and try to do it on their own. We're seeing moves like this in other parts of the country. Again, people call it segregation. They call it all these different various things, but in reality, there's nothing to stop anybody from transporting themselves to and from the city. On top of that, I believe they're being funded by sales tax largely, so you can pay your taxes through transacting over there, and the taxes are supposedly going to be significantly lower than in the city of Baton Rouge. So I'm guessing a lot of commerce and a lot of economic gains will end up in this particular area, and a lot of people will be leaving Baton Rouge proper in order to go to St. George, even if they're not going there specifically to live, but at least to work, thus improving their economy. Great social experiment. Essentially, what we have right here is a twin study. We have two different halves of a city, not quite half for St. George, but there's a population advantage that honestly should favor Baton Rouge, deciding that they're going to govern in a more Republican direction or a more Democratic direction, and we will see the end results of that. But, those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Should we not allow our municipalities to break up in this way, or are you fine with people forming their own city? What do you think about the racial component of this? Is this the real undergirding principle, or is it frustration with the fact that you have one party rule, the Democratic Party, and they wouldn't even let them form a school district in their area, despite the fact that the schools in Baton Rouge are among the worst in the state of Louisiana? All your thoughts down in the comments below. Keep it classy, and as usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the new place called St. George Till next time.